On October 21st, 1967, an important event took place in the history of the naval fleet. That day, the commander of the destroyer's radar station detected an approaching enemy fire on the screen and raised the alarm. At that moment, the ship's captain immediately ordered, "Turn left." The destroyer Iljut began to turn, but by that time, a bright yellow flash tore through the water, approaching from the Mediterranean seaside. Soon, a shell struck the ship's starboard side and exploded in the water just below the waterline. As a result of the explosion, metal fractured, a fire broke out, and water flooded into the lower decks. All 20 years of experience serving in the Navy seemed to betray him at that moment. The evasive maneuver left Iljut in a position where its side was fully exposed. The entire left flank was at risk, but the attack did not stop there. Following the first flash, a second explosion erupted, another blast that once again shook the vessel. This destroyer, having survived numerous dangerous situations, repelling German Wolfpack attacks during the war, protecting Arctic convoys, was now under threat from a completely different enemy. A small wooden vessel, seemingly not posing much danger, was about to make history in the Navy, armed with the weapon of the future, capable of changing the perception of naval battles. The destroyer, Zilius, painted in gray and shaped like a knife, lay low in the water, as if ready for any danger. Its length was just over 306 feet 9 inches, roughly the length of a football field. This ship was built with a special emphasis on durability, speed, and operational qualities. It belonged to the Z-class destroyers, created as part of the British Rapid Response Program during the war. These ships were designed for a variety of tasks, to be reliable, mass-producible, and versatile. Their construction was based on the hulls and mechanisms of the previous J-class, but all non-essential elements were eliminated to accelerate their construction during the difficult war years. The newly commissioned destroyer left the base at Scapa Flow and joined the 2nd Destroyer Division of the main squadron. Its sleek hull, 35 feet wide, easily cut through the waves like a blade. The ship's displacement was about 1,440 tons standard, and with full fuel and armament, it exceeded 2,500 tons. Such weight allowed it to withstand hits, yet it remained sufficiently maneuverable to navigate among dangers. By the end of 1944, Zilius was already performing important tasks, leading convoy escorts during risky mine-laying operations off the coast of Nazi-occupied Norway, defending Arctic convoys against constant German air attacks, and searching for submarines in the Kola area. In February 1945, he took a risk and penetrated behind enemy lines to rescue 1,525 Norwegians hiding in snow caves, where they had been sheltering for months. 2 months later, Zilius broke through into the Jøsingfjord Bay and sank German merchant ships. On April 20th of the same year, he entered Copenhagen along with cruisers and other destroyers to witness the capitulation of the German fleet. However, victory led to the need to reduce the naval personnel. After World War II, the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom found itself excessively large. It had more ships than necessary for peacetime. Many destroyers, including Zilius, were no longer needed for new missions, and from May 14, 1948, a new and significant moment appeared on the historical map. Israel declared its independence. This step was not merely a formal act, but the beginning of a new era, which immediately drew the world's attention and caused serious consequences. Within a few hours of the declaration of the State of Israel, armed forces from 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon, rushed to its territory. All these countries decided to demonstrate their strength and did not recognize the newly formed state, leading to the start of military actions. The subsequent events unfolded very quickly. A large-scale war began within a short period, lasting almost a year and ending in 1949. The outcome of this war was a victorious conclusion for Israel and the signing of a series of ceasefire agreements. As a result, Israel found itself in a position where it managed to acquire more land than initially allocated to it by the United Nations resolution. At the same time, Jordan took control of the west bank of the Jordan River, and Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip. These territories fell into the hands of new owners, and for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living there, a long and arduous period of displacement began as more than 700,000 of them were forced to become permanent refugees. They could not return to their former homes, and their fates were forever linked to foreign states and foreign destinies. However, peace did not follow after that. In the following years, no official peace treaties were signed between Israel and its neighboring Arab countries. On the contrary, the situation continued to escalate. Throughout the early 1950s, clashes on the border and armed attacks by Palestinian militants, the so-called Fedayeen, from neighboring territories, especially from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, became more frequent and brutal. Israel responded with force, which only heightened tensions and made the conflict even more explosive. By the mid-1950s, the situation in the region had taken on the character of a real hotspot, capable of erupting at any moment and leading to a new war. All this conflict took place against the backdrop of a global struggle between two superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. Each sought to assert its position by supporting either Israel or the Arab countries. The United States preferred to act quietly and cautiously, providing Israel with aid through arms supplies and diplomatic measures, avoiding open confrontation. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, demonstrated much greater activity and visibly supported the Arab nations. For several years, Soviet armed forces and specialists assisted Egypt and Syria by supplying modern T-34 tanks, MiG fighters, radar systems, artillery, and even Soviet advisors. All of this was part of a broader strategy to showcase strength on the international stage, to strengthen influence in the Middle East, and to gain control over the strategic crossroads of three continents. The actual conflict in the Middle East reignited in October 1956 when Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal. This move provoked a storm of discontent from Britain and France, who feared losing control over an important trade route. However, preceding events showed that tensions in the region had been mounting long before that. In May of the same year, Egypt blocked the Strait of Tiran, completely cutting off the passage of Israeli ships through this strategic waterway. At that time, Palestinian militants, known as Fedayeen, intensified their attacks, crossing borders and striking Israeli targets, especially oil refineries and ports in Haifa. These clashes grew larger and bloodier. All of this led to the fact that, by October 1956, in the midst of these escalating tensions, the situation erupted into open conflict. Sorry, but I noticed you provided only part of the text for translation. Please send the full original text so I can complete the task thoroughly and according to your requirements. Every powerful explosion caused the earth to shake, and in the Sinai Desert, thick black dust and smoke from destroyed fuel depots slowly enveloped the area. As the explosions continued to roar one after another, combat vehicles moved and rumbled on the surface, Israeli tanks rapidly advancing forward. Their tracks crushed the sand and stones, leaving behind a long trail of destruction and forging a path into enemy positions. Amid this chaos, which engulfed the entire area, a real battle was taking place, with no peaceful corner left untouched. For several hours, Israeli armed forces destroyed over 300 Egyptian aircraft, practically guaranteeing Israel's dominance in the region's airspace. At the same time, the Egyptian fleet remained in port, staying at its bases. When Israeli fighters flew across the sky, the Egyptian fleet was struck even before it could move from its anchorage. In the ports of Alexandria and Port Said, ships moored at anchor became immobile targets, constantly subjected to attacks from above. Enemy bombs pierced decks and fuel depots, causing fires and explosions, while plumes of smoke rapidly rose into the sky, obscuring the heavens. Most of the Egyptian fleet was destroyed or damaged in port before it could go to sea. Some ships were wrecked or disabled right at anchor, while the rest remained in the harbor, turned into immobile targets, unable to participate in combat throughout the conflict. At the same time, Israeli fighters struck airfields in Syria and Jordan, destroying their air forces and preventing any sorties. In western Oslo, on the west bank of the Jordan River, Israeli infantry and paratroopers advanced toward Jerusalem. By June 10th, Israeli forces had captured the Golan Heights from Syria, as well as the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan. Additionally, they seized the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip belonging to Egypt. As a result, by the end of this brutal conflict, Israel had managed to destroy 3 armies of Arab states, seize territories more than 3 times its own size, and radically alter the political map of the Middle East. In Cairo, after the six-day catastrophe, the humiliation was so intense that it seemed to burn brighter than the desert sun. The country's air force was shattered, the army defeated and forced to retreat, and the navy humiliated, as it failed to open fire even once during the entire period. Israel expanded its patrols across the Mediterranean, stretching nearly 800 kilometers toward the approaches to Port Said and much of the Sinai coast. Less than a month after the end of the Six-Day War, on July 11, 1967, two Egyptian ships slipped through the patrolled zone. They may have been trying to determine the boundaries of Israel's new maritime presence, or simply conducting cargo transfers along the shattered coastline. Regardless of the reason, they crossed a line that did not exist a month earlier. The Eilat radar station detected their signals. In an instant, it rushed forward, followed by two escort torpedo boats, forming a formation behind it. As soon as the crew realized they had been spotted, the Egyptian ships sharply turned north toward their home waters. But Eilat did not stop. It continued moving, approaching the enemy with each passing moment. On October 21, 1967, early in the morning, as the war later called the War of Attrition was just beginning to unfold, Egypt was already preparing to respond to the long months of humiliation and losses it had endured during the previous period. That morning in the Port Said harbor, a small Komar-class missile boat stealthily, almost silently, slipped through the water. Its engines, two diesel engines, operated so quietly that their noise was barely audible over the surrounding Mediterranean Sea. Ahead, several kilometers away, a squadron of ships was sailing, among which the Eilat-type vessel stood out. Confidently moving along the coast, its elegant silhouette blending with the sea horizon, unaware of the approaching danger and not noticing the threat as the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon, casting warm hues across the sky. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, a shout rang out on the Eilat's bridge. "Green missile to starboard!" And at that moment, all crew members' eyes turned toward the port, and each heart beat faster. In the sky, a few hundred meters from the ship, a bright green light flared up, which suddenly was replaced by a fiery orange glow. This was the launch of a -15 missile system, which soared upward, aimed directly at the Eilat. The missile was precisely targeted, and its radar sight indicated that it was inexorably closing in on its target. At that moment, Captain Yitzhak Shoshan, the ship's commander, quickly issued the order. "Battle stations, open fire!" And the crew hurriedly took up combat positions. The Eilat began accelerating to maximum speed, simultaneously turning its hull to reduce the visible profile from the missile and make its attack more difficult. At the same time, the radio operator urgently tried to warn command, transmit coordinates, and call for assistance. At this moment, the first Stug missile, commonly called by the crew, struck the right engine room, where the main boiler was located. The explosion was powerful. The blast wave tore through the ship's center, destroying vital mechanisms and igniting a fire. In an instant, power was cut off, a fire broke out, and communication with the command post was severed. Before they could recover, the crew saw the second missile hit the port side of the ship. The vessel's leadership realized the situation was critical. The pipe was smoking, the hull was deformed, and the fire was spreading rapidly. But to their surprise, the Eilat did not sink. Despite the damage, the crew fought to save the ship and combat the fire, trying to stop the flooding and maintain control. Time passed about an hour. The ship began to sink deeper and deeper, and Captain Shoshan ordered a full evacuation. Rescue boats and rafts damaged in the fire had to be replaced with improvised means: floating mattresses, pieces of wood, and other makeshift flotation devices. At that moment, Captain Shoshan made a final round of the decks to ensure the crew's safety and prepare them for departure, then jumped into the water himself to escape. At the same moment, he witnessed the third missile launch of the Komar. A new missile shot out from the stern of the ship, exploding several meters away, destroying its last supports and stripping it of buoyancy. Shortly afterward, another missile exploded in the water, the fourth one, as if it were the final chord in this deadly attack. In total, 47 of the 219 crew members of the Eilat were killed, and more than twice that number were wounded. The sinking of the ship marked not only the end of an era of maritime dominance, but also the beginning of new realities, where the outcome of battles was determined not only by the strength of the ships, but also by their ability to respond quickly to threats. At the moment when fierce fighting broke out at sea, the situation turned into a prolonged conflict based on human endurance, powerful artillery, and the feeling that neither side intended to give up. It was a time of heavy fighting when each day brought new challenges and losses, and victory seemed increasingly distant and difficult. During this period, fleeting feelings of joy erupted in the Arab world, sparked by the success of two Qamar missile ships, which struck enemy targets. People gathered in the streets of the port city of Port Said to express their happiness and pride in a victory and revenge that seemed unreachable at times. These ships became a symbol of perseverance and readiness to defend their interests at any cost. At the same time in Israel, the situation was escalating to the limit. The entire country was engulfed in anger and fury, expressed through mass scandals and street clashes. The public demanded immediate retribution and countermeasures for the attack. The focus was on Chief of Staff Yitzhak Rabin, who was surrounded by angry crowds, and his shouting supporters demanded immediate revenge. And just over 2.5 days later, that is, 70 hours and 30 minutes after the attack, Israel decided to deliver a powerful response. The country responded with heavy fire, using artillery and missile systems. The enemy was subjected to the strongest blow. The Suez port was shelled from all sides. As a result, 2 of the 3 oil refineries, which were the main source of fuel and gas for Egypt and supplied about 80% of the country's oil products, were destroyed. Other parts of the city also suffered from retaliatory strikes. When the international community, represented by the United Nations, demanded a ceasefire and a truce, Israel either ignored these demands or cited technical difficulties preventing immediate cessation of hostilities. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, concerned about rising tensions and escalating conflict, decided to show its support and warn of possible consequences. It sent 7 warships to visit Egyptian ports, demonstrating solidarity while also showing strength. Over the course of 6 to 7 years, from the 16th to the 17th year, the conflict, known as the War of Attrition, unfolded in constant movement and exchange of blows. There were no clear front lines at the front positions. Enemy clashes occurred across the entire sea, in the sky, and in the desert. Fighters soared and dove, delivering swift and fierce strikes before quickly disappearing from sight. Artillery bombarded fortified positions, maintaining continuous fire day and night. The thunder of cannon fire echoed across the desert, destroying the land and exhausting those on both sides of the conflict. While the traditional approach assumed that large ships with numerous guns dominated the seas, this idea lost its strength after the sinking of the Eilat squadron. Under new conditions, victory was increasingly achieved by fast ships equipped with guided missile systems. As a result, military doctrine changed. Now, early threat detection, first strikes, and the ability to quickly evade enemy missiles became crucial. Across the ocean in the United States, military sailors had long been monitoring the growing threat posed by missile systems. However, the situation at that moment proved to be different. It was a real ship sunk by real missiles, and this caused a profound shock. Eilat became a vivid example of how success can be uneven and simultaneously create vulnerabilities. The then-current Styx missiles, which armed ships like the Qamar class, were slow, bulky, and equipped with outdated electronics by modern standards. However, these weapons proved to be remarkably destructive, leading to a true revolution in naval defense. Subsequently, an era of rapid proliferation of missile weapons at sea began. The Soviet Union continued to develop a wide range of naval armaments, creating increasingly fast, intelligent, and maneuverable missiles, such as the P-270 Moskit and the P-800 Onyx. These new weapons were designed not only to match existing threats, but also to outpace them, establishing preventive measures. Small missile boats, once regarded as simple patrol vessels, gradually transformed into fast, stealthy, and dangerous combat ships. They gained importance that previously seemed unattainable and began playing a significant role in modern naval confrontations. Corvettes and other small ships, previously considered merely patrol vessels, are now viewed as full-fledged combat units capable of delivering serious strikes. Thanks to the use of long-range missiles and more affordable costs, small ships gain the ability to perform effective strikes without the need to build vast naval forces. By the early 21st century, This development reached new heights with the appearance of missiles like Russia's Caliber and India's BrahMos. These high-speed cruise missiles, capable of flying low over the sea surface and bypassing modern defense systems, became true weapons of the new generation. The line that began with the Mosquitoes gradually blurred and came to include not only ships but also submarines, unmanned aerial vehicles, and cruise missiles launched from containers. The legacy of the Eilat events lives on to this day. It is reflected not only in what was lost but also in how a new future was revealed. It was precisely because of these events that new opportunities for naval defense and offense emerged, which are now considered an integral part of modern military strategy.